Hey everybody, we're live. I don't know why I don't have any video going, but today doesn't seem to be the best day in terms of Hangouts, does it? So we are 15 minutes late, and I think Chris is not going to show up. I hope he's all right. He's usually not the kind of guy who's late, but today I didn't hear anything from him, so I assume he might be stuck in traffic or having internet problems, which is not too uncommon in Colombia, I think. Yeah, Bogota is where he is right now. Anyways, so sorry for messing this up this week. It's a little bit crazy. Usually Chris does all of the setting this up and changing the page and all of that kind of stuff. So by next week we'll have it figured out. And actually, it's quite a reminder to have an SOP for everything. So we have this page, appbusinesspodcast.com/weekly, which you can also get to by abpweekly.com. And it's, I think, a lead pages page. And Chris has the credentials to that account. And as he just set this up and always changed the links and all that kind of stuff, I never even thought about it. Problem is, Chris isn't here, and I can't change the link to the video on this page. And the reason is that we don't have, created an SOP where, there are references to the required credentials, where to go to, which link to use, all that kind of stuff. And if we had, a VA do that, then we had done it before. But so far, Chris was doing it himself. And now that's a single point of failure. So pretty good example why you should use SOPs in every part of your business. But we're trying to figure this out. So actually, this is going to be a pretty quick weekly review, I guess, from what I wrote down here. So the big news, of course, is, as we have covered 3 times now, the acquisition of Beats by Apple. And it's confirmed now. So they bought it for $3 billion, apparently. Yeah, nothing more to say about that. I think we covered it in detail. But another acquisition was much more interesting to me this week, and that's App Annie bought Distimo. And we have covered reports from both of those companies. Both are mobile app analytics and statistics companies. And it makes a lot of sense for them to merge, I guess. But it's also, 2 of the very, very big players merging here. And it seems like App Annie is going to get a very strong position in the market. So it's going to be interesting to watch out for that and see what happens there. But for now, we don't really know what's going to be in the future with Distimo and the reports and all of that. But it seemed to be going this route for some time now with joint reports and whatever they were doing. So quite an interesting piece of news, I guess. I have a quick tip for you, and it's very unrelated to apps, so apologize, but I think it might be useful for some of you. So I'm a little bit of a productivity freak and trying to optimize what I'm doing. And so gamification mechanics are something that I would love to have in more productivity tools. And I did find one which I really like, and it's called Habit RPG, like Habit, role-playing game. You can find it at habitrpg.com. And it's kind of like a to-do manager, but more than that, you can also try to learn and gain habits or lose bad habits like smoking or eating sugar or that kind of stuff. And it helps you with daily rituals as well. So yeah, I kind of like it. It is a role-playing game. You have a little character, you get gold, and you have health and all that kind of stuff. Don't want to take too much time talking about this, but I really like it. And if you are into that productivity, self improvement, personal development kind of stuff, you should check it out, Habit RPG. So that's sort of the official part of this Hangout. Now I have some very nice listeners joining me in the chat room this time. I want to say hello to Mark, and what's your name? Jay Valerioit. Sorry for butchering your name. I tried. So you were asking about VAs in general. So that's virtual assistants and how we use them. So Chris is using virtual assistants to a much greater degree than I am, and it just shows again that he's more of the business kind of guy, and I'm still a little bit stuck in the development mindset, but I'm moving towards using virtual assistants more and more, and just general. Oh, hey Jordan. So Jordan was asking this question, and I'm moving towards using virtual assistants more and more. And for example, the podcast is now edited by Hazel, who's doing an awesome job, and she's one of Chris's virtual assistants. I do know that Hazel is not, he did not find her from a very professional service, I think. I do not know how he found her, but the way I did it in the past was the really old school kind of way. So I did go to sites like Odesk, and I still think Odesk is one of the best places. Elance, I personally don't like that much, but I think it's really just because I don't like their interface. I think you can find just as capable people there. But Odesk, I was just very familiar with from the beginning, and I keep using it. You can still find good people there, but of course it's work and it's a filter problem. So the question is like, how do you filter your applicants in a way that doesn't cost you much more time than the whole task is worth, and so you can find people that are actually going to be able to stay for a while and gonna take on more and more work over time, so you can really rely on these people. I think you could do a whole episode about this, but let's just, and we probably will. Yeah, there's something else I need to tell you in just a second. So we probably will do a whole episode or more about that. But let's just say you can find good people. It's not mystery, but it's work. It's real work. You really have to put in the work. And so you better have a use case where you can use these people in your company a lot and give them a real kind of employee VA position, rather than just hiring them for one task here and then 2 months later for another task, because I think then it's just not worth the effort of even finding someone. So you need to make sure you have enough work for these people to have at least like 10 hours a week of work for them or something like that, because otherwise it's very hard to find good people, because they want to have some kind of continuity as well. If you don't want to put in this amount of work, and if arguably if you have more money than income than time, more money than time, then you shouldn't bother with those kinds of tasks. I think it's a good service to use is Virtual Staff Finder. And I can't remember the name. It's let me look it up. It's a DCer. It's a guy from the Dynamite Circle. I have forgot his name. Gosh, give me a second. It's Well, I just keep talking while I look it up. Anyways, it's by a fellow entrepreneur who's also a member of the Dynamite Circle, who's a baller guy, and he just saw this problem that it's going to be a lot of work, and he said, we can we can streamline this process because we'll be doing it over and over again for our clients, so we'll be very good at it. And so we'll just offer this as a service, and it is Chris Ducker. Thank you very much, Jordan. So Chris Ducker, he's an awesome guy. He's also in the Dynamite Circle, and he is, or he at least was, located in the Philippines, and built a real office there where people actually, work for him. So it's a real legit operation, and he can find people for you. So he goes out into probably what is, real life in the Philippines. He has his personnel search through applicants for you and presents you with 3 different applicants that fit your position that you described, and he charges a couple of $100s for that, and you can choose one of them. If one of them doesn't perform, within a certain time, you can tell them, so let's say, okay, this candidate just wasn't good enough, or just wasn't what I needed, and you can choose one of the other 2 applicants. So generally, I haven't done this myself yet, but I think for a long-term hire or for a full-time position, that's definitely what I would do in the future. Because what I've heard from people who used the service is that it's always an instant hit. So they never had to go back and request another candidate, which I think is quite impressive. So I think what you have to keep in mind, though, is that it's still gonna be your responsibility to accurately describe the position that you're hiring for. And so if you haven't figured out completely in your mind yet who Chris is here. He's gonna join in a minute, I guess. Cool. So if you haven't figured out exactly what you're trying to outsource, if you haven't created your SOPs, if you haven't created the process, then it's going to be hard to outsource. And with that said, Chris has joined our Hangout. Hey, Chris.
Dude, did it start at 9 or 9:30?
We usually start at 9, so half an hour ago.
I have no idea why I thought it was at 9:30. So at least we're not recording this live and leaving it on YouTube forever. Did you start at 9:30, or have you been talking for 30 minutes?
I started 15 minutes late, and okay. we are joined in the chat by Jordan and Mark. And
wow, we actually have attendees the one time I'm late, huh?
Yeah, dude. So I have figured out how to start this, but I didn't figure out, I didn't have the credentials to the Lead Pages account, so I couldn't change the page. So people can watch live when they click on the video above the chat. I actually posted the link to the chat, so Jordan and Mark can watch live. But
okay, cool. And how do you see Jordan and Mark? I'm looking at the Q&A, and I don't see them.
You go to the weekly page.
Okay. Yeah.
And they're in the chat there. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jordan and Mark.
Yeah. Thank you. I was just using this as an example that you really need to have SOPs for everything, because if we had, I could actually have figured out how to change the page myself, and hence I couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chris, let me ask you this question from Jordan, where he's asking like what we do to hire VAs, and if we had any experience with the Virtual Staff Finder by Chris Ducker.
Yeah.
And I was saying that I don't have personal experience. I think it's a great service, and for a full-time position, I would consider it. Though you have to make sure that you have your process, correctly set up. You have your SOPs in place, and you actually know what you're hiring for, because otherwise, no service can really help you if you're not able to actually describe the position that you're hiring for.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people. I have 2, 1.5 VAs if you're going full time, right? I have one full time and one half part time, and the second one, she was available before I was totally ready for her. A lot of it was related to the podcast, and so I would say things like, "Look, we're going to build these SOPs together. Tell me what's not working for you. Tell me what's broken." So I would say if you have the work for a full-time VA, you can do the SOPs on the fly. You can do them. You can do it with the VA. But so I've I got lucky with Hazel, and if it weren't for getting lucky with Hazel, which was not found through Virtual Staff Finder, I definitely would have used Virtual Staff Finder. Johnny Dumas is a guy who has a podcast, and he swears by them. The process is something like you get 3 shots. Like you can hire a VA. Remember, these are already vetted full-time VAs that have experience VAing for other people, so it's not like a total shot in the dark like Odesk or some of the other ones. But then once you get a VA, if it's not working out, you can exchange, swap, replace. It sounds weird when we're talking about people, but for another VA twice. So you get 3 shots at a VA to make sure one works for you. The service is $600 to, I think, find one. But you figure if you're paying, right now I'm paying my full-time VA $1,000, which is probably too much, but I'm just happy with her and I don't want to mess with it. But I mean, just by hiring someone for $700, you could save that $600 in 2 months if you're comparing it to my situation, right? So
Yeah.
I guess that's a long way of saying if I were in the need for a full-time VA, if Hazel didn't want to work for me or had another thing going on, then I would go right there.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's basically what I said. Yeah.
Experience.
Okay. So dude, I get echo. Why do I get echo from you?
So Jordan, yeah. So I haven't used Virtual Staff Finder. I got lucky with Hazel, but yeah, I would definitely use them going forward. And plus, I think Chris has lots of tools like salary guides, and it's such an important thing, and it's a step to like getting out of your business. It's not something you want to mess around with for 3 months, 6 months, like trying to figure it out. For $600 just to get it done right, I think that's kind of where my head's at with all that.
You're welcome. Yeah, Chris, I basically covered what I thought is interesting this week, which is App Annie bought this deal, Visa acquisition confirmed, and yeah, that's basically it. Anything else?
I had a good interview last night with Greg Hickman. It's probably going to air in a week and a half, but we ended up talking for almost an hour, and I told him 20 minutes. But his story is pretty interesting because he was really involved in mobile. He was like one of the first guys, like almost his first job out of college was in selling marketing texting, selling text as like a marketing tool, or SMS, I guess it's called. And he just recently went out on his own, but it was a really cool story of like it's like an entrepreneur story, and then it's also, of course, mobile related. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And Dave, we haven't talked about that yet because it was late Munich time, but that turned out really well.
Yeah, cool. Happy to hear that.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, the week ahead, I think we're both excited to dig in more to this app series, and I don't know if you talked about that. And then I think the week ahead, we've got another interview that we're holding on to because Dave's got a product he's launching, but that was a really good interview because he's got so many good resources. I think he's just he feels like a guy that's been in mobile for a while, so he can like provide a lot of good guidance. At least that's how I kind of look at it. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we haven't released yet that you and I have already experienced. That I think the audience is really going to enjoy. Right.
Chris, can you get headphones or something? Because we're all getting echo when I talk.
Yeah, sorry. We didn't have that problem last couple of weeks.
Yeah, or you just turn down the volume a little bit? I don't know. So last thing I
Yeah, I'll
wanted
do
to
that.
mention is that Chris and I have been working on this idea for the podcast where we think it would be interesting to talk about um, in kind of an audiobook format about how to build an app business from the very start to crazy liberation, outsourcing, diversification ideas. So basically from scratch to the dream, and exploring that as a kind of a how-to guide, maybe, so to speak. And so we have recorded the introduction to that series, and it will air sometime next week. And I guess what I want to hear from the listeners is whether they have any particular requests or ideas. What should be in that book? So, the general outline of that would be the definition. What are we trying to accomplish? What kind of business do you want? What kind of lifestyle do you want? Then the creating your app business part, where we talk about the market selection, the product creation, the marketing, the sales, the optimizations, all of that kind of stuff which you can do. And then we cover liberation and further outsourcing and diversification at the very end. And those are very broad topics, and we will drill down a lot on them. We will try to create as many sub-chapters as we can, so you get a really detailed guide from starting with basically nothing regarding the app business and going towards a very stable, low maintenance app business, which is what we assume you want to do. And on that course, we would love your feedback on what you want to hear there. Like what are the topics that we might miss if you don't tell us to cover them. So input from the listeners in that regard would be great.
Yeah, as an example, I was going through my experience saying, no one ever really told me how to get my business name up there instead of Chris Chigi as like the publisher for the apps. Little things like that just get kind of glossed over. So it wouldn't be like, I don't think we would go through and say step by step how to do that. It'd be more like, here's what you need to be thinking about, and here's how you do it at a high level. Now,
yeah, it's just a reminder that you shouldn't forget this or that. But it's not going to be click this button, enter this number, click that button, because that's just not what audio is very good at. So we need video or text for that. But it's going to be, you can imagine it to be something like an audiobook where we're going to have a complete field guide, so to speak, of how to create a profitable app business.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here on the forum chat thing. So now Mark asked a question. How often do you find yourself looking at ASO for your apps and updating? You know what? I'm usually monitoring them on the next big push. So like, for instance, I have a big push on Android I'm doing. So now I'm really looking at all the setting up ad networks and all the different things that I've built there to make sure that this next push is, gonna go smoothly. But then part of it is that my VAs, I've really tried to empower them to say, like, hey, look, if something's not working right, if the screen's changed, if anything's just not how you expect it, tell me so we can fix it, so we're not like looking at dated SOPs, because they get it too. They get the whole reason why there's SOPs. What role does losing the current review? Yeah. What role does losing the current review rating status in iOS play in you deciding to update with new keywords? Oh, you know what? Not really, because I use App Review Me. So I still, every time there's a new release, I try to go in and review it, and I just hate that game, and I hate playing that game, and I hate bugging my users for reviews and ratings. So any way I can get around that, I do. But I kind of try to structure all my apps as if it's best for the client, like the user, if it's better for the user, then I'm going to do it. Screw Apple. And I know it's crazy to say screw Apple because I make decent money from working with their tools and everything they offer, but I don't think they have that right. And so yeah, I'm going to try to go around them in that regard and keep pumping out updates, changing keywords, and keep optimizing releases, and then Hopefully, App Review Me can get enough reviews, and me and my VA reviewing. It's not great, but yeah,
So
I don't think there's a way around that now. But I just don't like having older apps where I have a new release. You know, a new release could be worth $20 a day per app, and then I think I shared that on the podcast recently how much that could be worth to you. So
I think that I don't know if that aired yet, but that was a cool thing. Definitely check that out. That's a cool story. Or was it on the last weekly? I can't remember. Either way, Jordan is saying to regarding that guide that I was just mentioning, that he's in the app business for a year now, and so he's looking at more of the advanced kind of stuff. And I was discussing exactly this point with Chris before we decided to do this. And so first of all, it's not going to be replacing the podcast. It's going to be supplemental. So we are still going to do 3 episodes a week, same kind of style as we currently do it. But between those episodes, we are going to try to have a part of this, quote unquote audiobook to fill in the days between that. And we are maybe not going to be able to fit every day, depending on how fast we can progress on that. But it's not going to replace the podcast. And second of all, I think even if you are already in a very established, very good, solid app business, then I think there's going to be still a lot of value in that book. And the reason is that we're going to start at the very beginning, yes, and you might have passed that beginner's phase already, but it's, I think, always a good idea to revisit the decisions that you've made and think about why you have made certain decisions, and if you're still on the track that you have set out to arrive at, whatever your goals are. So it's going to be very interesting, even though you have passed certain stages, to revisit them and think about what maybe tiny mistakes you might have made to correct them now, so it doesn't, the mistakes don't accumulate over time and become bigger and bigger mistakes. And so just like an established businessman will read business books every year, and those business books might cover the same principles over and over again, but they need to re-examine the same topics and the same concepts again and again and again to hone their craft. I think that's the same thing with every craft. And so we're just trying to create.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that to address that, like more advanced topics is, we're still going to have 3 a week that we're going to use for whatever we find interesting. But lots of the stuff we find interesting is either what other people are telling us is not working for them, or stuff that's not working for us that we figured out. A good example is I'm still struggling. I have a couple apps on MoPub mediation that aren't getting very good fill rates, even with mediation. So I have to go back and forth with. It's only a couple apps, but it's like, okay, why are these apps? So I have to figure that out. I guess sharing experiences with ad mediation, and everyone wants to know what ad networks are working for people and what kind of setups. So I think that kind of stuff. Here you go, Jordan. Yeah, the points about scaling. Oh yeah, for sure. And I think I'm starting to get a reputation as this guy who's got a bunch of SOPs. I mean, it's true, I do. So if I can help with like more specific questions around managing VAs and SOPs, ask me, because I definitely have a lot of experience with that. I mean, when I say I don't do anything, it's not a joke. Like, I'm really like waking up saying, okay, what new things can I do? Which is a really fun way to wake up. But yeah, so we'll still have 3 days a week to hit advanced topics and future tech and some of these other cool things that we like doing. And who knows, maybe those might even creep into the guide, because it's not that far in the future if you're executing well to hit some of these more advanced topics. Virtual currency with Ad Colony and all this kind of cool stuff.
Right. So it's just like the first parts of the book might not apply to you because you're already that advanced, and you. I guess I still argue that you could still learn something from that. But even if you don't, just skip those episodes of this series and start chiming in once we reach a level where you think it's appropriate. So you don't have to listen, from start to from beginning to end. But I think it's still, valuable for a lot of people to have something that's a complete guide from starting here to ending there, rather than only having those episodes here and there, where one day we talk about analytics, and next day we talk about retention, and then the next day we talk about downloads. So this is interesting. It's interesting discussions, but it's always all over the place. You want to have something that's chronologically ordered, so you have a very well structured guide that you can come back to and refer back to certain episodes when you need guidance, I guess. That's the idea behind it.
We could do another book on ASO or SOPs, I think. So, Jordan, I'm just going to keep answering your questions like this, if that's okay. What I do is I try to get an SOP really good, and I hand it to them, and I say, hey, if there's any questions, anything you need, whatever, let me know, and let's review your work after 1 or 2 entries or whatever, complete executions of the SOP. And then I, hopefully the first one didn't result in what I wanted, so I show them, no, I'm looking for this. So maybe there's like a day or 2 of back and forth and making sure, setting expectations and understanding what the other person's seeing and reading. And really after that, I've had VAs saying, oh, Chris, it's so good to hear from you. Sometimes I feel like I'm working on my own. I'm like, no, you're not. Trust me, you're not working on your own. We're all working in this big thing, like this big machine. But yeah, they're usually self-sufficient like right away, within the first week. And it really is how well you've written your SOPs, how complicated they are. Yeah, I would say right away. Like for sure, the examples you said, like setting up a new app, ASO research for existing new apps. Yes, I mean I have an SOP for that, and they do 80% of it, and then I come in and like do the little unscientific stuff of matching keywords to spaces, and it's kind of like a craft of words to make it sound right. So I don't rely on like someone who speaks English as a second language to do that. But yeah, I would say it's pretty soon. I mean, you want to like see what's broken right away, so you just kind of throw them into the fire. Voice over Skype or Hangout. No, Skype. Over Skype. Although it's usually Skype chat. Although usually like I try to have a voice conversation with them. So it's a little more personal. Usually it's like after you've done that, it's like right to just Skype text and email, and then a ton of Google Docs.
Yeah, my experience is that you have to go back to voice or preferably video, but sometimes that's just not possible because of bandwidth or something like that. But at least voice from time to time, so maybe once a week is a good rule of thumb. And every time when you notice that, for example, in email or in chat, like in text, the communication is somewhat broken, it takes a lot of time for going back and forth to get a point across. That's usually where I say, okay, let's just jump on a Skype call real quick, because it's going to be much easier to handle and to clear the issue here than to keep going back and forth and maybe risking a mistake in communication causing some trouble.
Yeah, I found a lot of VAs, and maybe it's just my experience, but a lot of them are shy about their English.
Yeah.
So they really don't want to get on the Skype call, and they'll talk to you all day on chat. But when you get hearing their voice, they get really like embarrassed or something. So, yeah. And yes, I'm paying for Sensor Tower. I'm on the $80 version, but I really should be on the next tier. I'm just so cheap. I just keep deleting apps and putting a new app on there because I don't do any of the long-term tracking, although I should. I've got it down to where I download the keywords I was targeting, and then I can re-upload them. You know what? If I had, like for the series David and I are building, where it's a build a business app and it's something that I could get behind, but a lot of the stuff I've done, I started 18 months ago, and I'm just kind of not super interested in anymore. It's like quizzes and all these silly games that work and make you money, but just aren't like I'm not passionate about. So there's a long way of saying I don't put in the keyword effort that I probably could on all those different quizzes and other little silly games that I have, which Price is Right, and all that stuff. And plus, it's such a crowded place. It's like, okay, if I'm in the top 3 for this very specific search, then that's probably good enough. But for building a business, the ones David and I are working on, I'll probably really nerd out on Sensor Tower and track it and all that kind of stuff.
And
but yeah,
that's
I think
all gotta be
I don't know
covered
where
by.
the free account's limited. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but I feel like on the $70 account, I'm limited. Like I think I've got 5 apps for 100 keywords, and I run into that top, max all the time. Gab really recommends Mobile Dev HQ, and they have a free tier. It's either by app or by. I don't think it's by keywords. I think it's by app. So if yeah, that might be another option for you is Mobile Dev HQ. Yeah, and for translating, I use. Hey, this is cool, David. We got to do this more often. Just take questions and answer them. For localizing, I'm terrible. I use Google Translate. I only do metadata, and well, my fiance speaks Spanish, so I used I used her for Spanish, but yeah, and I have not. You know what? I haven't done a really great look at how localization impacts downloads in about 6 months. But what I found was it's almost like you have to get monetization right, which then means you have to get retention right, because it's expensive to get it professionally translated and do the whole effort. And if you're not going to make, several, let's say it's $1,000, or let's say it's $200 per language, you're not to do the screens and everything, or probably a little bit more. It's not. There's no guarantee that. There's a long way of saying I don't know, but I haven't taken that leap on my apps yet to pay for professional translating, just because the ROI seems like it'd be a stretch. That's how I've
We personally have
unless
no
I've got this
data.
game that can compete in Japan, I just haven't done it.
Yeah, we personally have no data on that yet, and the accounts of other people are very different. So sometimes people say it's an incredible sales driver. Other times it didn't do anything for them. So I guess we'll let you know once we have more experience with that, with our new series maybe.
Yeah, and there's got to be a localization expert we could bring in to tell us like
Oh, for sure.
macro
Yeah,
data, right? Jordan's got another one.
it's a good one for you.
Yeah, dude, I've totally seen an update. I've totally seen keywords make a huge difference. Now, it might have been because I was coming from a position where the keywords were just trash before, and the second round was way better. But yeah, in fact, I'll see if I can't go back and look through App Annie and find where there were the big, like, obvious next level, download levels for certain apps. But for sure, part of it is that there's so many moving parts. It's hard to know, is it the new keywords, or is it more ratings and it boosted you, or whatever else is in Apple's black box. But yeah, I've definitely had. Well, let me say it like this: I've definitely changed keywords and released a new version and seen a huge spike. Like if we're talking double or more, then yes. But maybe that was because there was less competition 18 months ago, or I'd have to look and remember when it was.
So Gabriel Masharet would certainly say that there's a big difference. So
Well,
yeah,
actually, I think he would say the opposite. I think he would say, look, there's so many other things you have to get right. ASO isn't like this magic pill. In fact, I think that's part of the frustration with some of these ASO guys is like they get brought in and a 20% increase isn't enough. And it's like, well, in most businesses,
well, yeah,
great.
okay, but then 20% increase is pretty much is a lot, I guess. So it depends on what your current level is, right? But if you get a 20% increase just by changing a keyword, I mean it's not really work, right? So you don't really do anything. You
got to increase them at the app, so that's the only thing. But
yeah, but it's not like creating another feature or something like that.
Right.
So what I guess you need
I
to
would
do.
say, real quick, I would say given the ratings challenges we mentioned earlier, it is like unless there's here's where I'm at these days. Partly because I have so many apps and I've been selling apps like crazy just because I have too many and I'm just losing interest in the ones I have. And if you want to buy 50 quizzes, let me know. um, yeah, unless I'm adding a new feature, I don't trip out or focus too much on the keywords. I just only change keywords when I've got a new feature in an app, just because it's twofold. It's I'd lose all the ratings. So I guess when you ask me if I consider ratings and rankings on it when I'm doing a new release, I guess I consider it. I don't let it stop me, but the reason I don't let it stop me is because usually it's accompanied by a feature or some other type of upgrade that makes it worth updating the app. And again, you're talking to the guy who is starting App Jetpack, and by the way, we're in like I finally have the tool, right? So we'll be in alpha like next week. And so I'm like the guy who believes, look, there's way more value in focusing on retention and some other things than in focusing on keywords. So I've just, I think keywords are huge, and if you're not, it's like if you're not doing it, you're going to lose out. But is it worth just submitting apps with a new keyword just to try stuff out? I don't know. Unless your app is just doing zero, it's probably, I just wait for features.
Right. So, Chris, I would like to know if you would agree with this, but the way I see it is that the keyword changes, or let's say re-evaluating your current keywords, should just be a step in the checklist or in your SOP that you have whenever you submit a new binary anyways. And so if that's just part of your process there, then because Mark was saying he doesn't seem to see the return on investment on it, yeah, if that's something that you have to actively do and lose all the ratings, and then there might not be the return on investment. But if it's something that is just part of your release strategy, where you do it every single time almost automatically because it's part of your process, I think that's where you can gain an edge. It's can be a couple of free percentage point of growth there.
Yeah, well, I think, David, as I kind of grow into this role of not doing so many apps that are, well, Build a Business can definitely be, I don't want to say reskinned, but reused, right? We could do a bakery and a pizza shop and a brewery and all this different stuff. But I think as we get into bigger apps, we might be alienating half of our audience, because it is going to be something where, look, yeah, it's important, but we don't think about it like that because we're too focused on retention and monetization in our big apps that we're investing in for 2 years. We're going in the direction of bigger, longer apps,
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I just have an email drafted to you about, hey, if we're following our own best practices that we share on the podcast, we need a landing page, and we need to start collecting emails and all some of these other things.
Yeah.
That, when you're pumping out 30 quizzes, you don't focus on, but you do when you're doing a bigger app. So I think that's kind of where my head's at, which is I'm not going to update Build a Business just for keywords, We'll update a Build a Business app and then reevaluate keywords at that time, but unless it's just doing zero and it's like, hold on, we're getting no downloads of what's going on, then we take a look at keywords and icon screenshots and everything else. But if, let's say, we're getting some acceptable number of downloads for Build a Business app, and I don't know what that number is, but I guess it more depends on how much money it's making. Let's just say for an early entry app, $5 to $10 a day, we can build off that, right? And it sounds like so little, because it is, but that's all we need to be able to start improving it and optimizing it. Then it's worth the focus. But
Chris, before you answer the next question, I just want to quickly comment on that. So the question is, what strategies have you found helpful in increasing your users' retention for apps? And just, as an example, this is exactly the kind of question that I want to create a book for, and I'm just calling it a book, but it's a podcast series, of course, where you ask yourself that question. You think, hey, there was this guy that David was talking about. Let me see if he has a chapter on that. And of course, there's going to be this big table of contents, and you'll find the episode, and you click there, and you just have a 30-minute or 10-minute, or whatever it is, part episode where you can listen about just the retention strategies. So that's the goal.
Hey, what are we calling this thing, David? Building an app business podcast series?
Right. Building an app business.
The app we're building, that's the challenge. That's what keeps messing me up. We have a building a business app and building a business building an app business podcast series.
Yeah,
All right.
we need
Either
a
way,
better
I'm gonna get you a
pitch.
T-shirt or a hat or maybe a beanie, so that way you can just like advertise the the book all the time or the podcast series.
No, I'm just trying to explain it, I guess.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Chris, what are the retention strategies?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I'm just teasing you, but I agree with you. That will definitely be a subject for the book, and I'm expecting we're going to be researching this book and learning as we go because this stuff changes so much so fast that there's just new stuff out there all the time. But for retention, I think the biggest things are you want to get events into your apps. Like I'll give you a concrete example after I say this. You want to get events into your apps so you know what users are doing inside your apps, right? And then you can adjust your app based on that. And an example is I had an app that was, let me think if it was one kind of quiz game, little 1-minute game app that I had. And what I noticed was only like 85% of the people went from opening the app to finishing like the most simple basic thing like starting a level. Oh, it wasn't even finishing a level, it was starting a level, right? So I would go in and say, well, why am I losing 15%, right, of these people I'm fighting so hard on ASO to get? They open the app, which is only 95% of people that download it, right? So you lose 5% right there. Then 15% of those people wouldn't even, they'd open it and then like not know what to do. And so it was too hard to figure out how to get the thing started. It wasn't too hard, but if you looked at it from the perspective of 15 people or 15%, you could say, oh, I could see how someone would get lost here. So I just changed the screen around a little bit, and that solved that problem. Okay, the exact same app series, the next problem, level 3. People would finish level 1, like something like 92%, level 3, 95%, or level 2, level 95%, etc. Like the same, 9/10 of the people who would have the app and open level 1, finish level 1, finish level 2. Level 3 was like 50%, and there's this huge drop-off. Well, guess what? I had one of the answers wrong. And so people were like, oh, this app sucks. Just little insights like that is a huge, has been huge for me. Like a light click saying, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's going on inside these apps. And you could even say, hey, if only 80% are finishing level 3, make it easier, or add a bonus coin pop-up that says, hey, you have more virtual currency. So I would say the best way to fix retention, number one thing is analytics. Get into your apps and understand what's going on. And I'm all fired up about it because that's what App Jetpack is. It says, look, why is your retention so screwed up here, and why don't you have events in your apps, and da-da-da-da-da. It basically tells you what low-hanging fruit you have in your apps. I'm excited to use it, the tool. I told Jesse, my partner on the project, like, dude, I can't wait to see what the tool says for my apps because I don't have the answer. I'm not doing all this analysis. Let's see, other retention things. You know what? I found being super generous early helps, and there's some great books from guys who all they do is live and breathe games. Eric Seifert. There's another book, Free to Play, that is outstanding, and it's a quicker read. Eric Seifert's book's like $50 on Amazon for Kindle version.
What's the title of that book? Do you know
that? I'll have to look it up right now while we're talking. But yeah, so being super generous, like for one thing, like giving them a bunch of free coins, like as a pop-up. I'm thinking in coins and game and stuff, so if that's not relevant, then it's almost like case by case. But if it's a game or some type of entertainment app where you can be super what's it called? Super
generous.
Generous, thank you. Jeez, super generous, and give away some stuff, and then make the first purchase a no-brainer. Then I think that's going to help for sure with retention, for sure. I've done it. It's affected my apps for sure. I'm like the new big convert to retention. Like at first I was getting into keywords and I recognized, wow, there's a lot of guys who know a lot about keywords. Let me just read what they're doing. And then I really got into monetization and like really understood all the options and all the different techniques and tried tons of stuff and failed at tons of stuff, but kind of figured it out. And now it's like, well, retention is the most important thing by far. Like combine ASO and monetization, and it's still only half of retention. If you get retention figured out, the rest will figure it out. You can figure everything else out. So now it's like, but retention is also the biggest thing by far. There's so much you can do. So that's like my new nerdy passion, is like how to figure out retention in a big way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark was asking about strategies. So in my opinion, there are really only two strategies regarding retention. There's, a passive strategy and an active strategy. And what most people don't think about is passive is more important at the beginning. So that means plugging the holes, right, where your stream of users is leaking out of the app. So what you said, you get your analytics in there, all good analytics, be it Google, Flurry, whatever. They have these flows of visitors where you can track, on each page, so to speak, where they go and when they leave. And so you will see why are so many people leaving at this specific page. So you plug the holes. You as you said, you find these problems or these mistakes that you have in your app and you fix them. So that will be, the passive way of getting people to stay longer in your app, because you don't, shy them away anymore. But then, if you have that figured out, you can actively try to re-engage them with the app, and that's mostly done by notifications. So if you have any, reason for people to continuously come back to your app, and it's especially easy with apps where things take time, and then they need to go back and harvest them or things like that, then you can use notifications to actively pull them back into the app, versus at the beginning you should be more focused on not letting them get out of the app.
Yes. There's some other things too that are obvious and that we didn't mention, which is things like making it more fun with friends, like having them engage their social networks, but that's almost like you have to design that in. A lot of the retention stuff you have to design in ahead of time almost, but it's better to know them. All right, here's 3 books. Oh, good, it formatted okay. 3 books that I read that are awesome. I mean, really, like, make you think different about apps. Like, I think different about a silly app I have called Face Compare, and I changed it around, and I basically gave myself a $9,000 raise because I implemented some of this stuff. So, highly recommend. I still continue to pump out volume reskin apps. Yeah, because I have so much code. So, like, I had this silly code. So I was part of Chad Moretta's, what was it? Like, you pay $99 a month and you get a piece of crap code once a month. But I just wanted more pieces of code that I could put into my other apps and use. So I actually canceled that membership because I wasn't getting value. But the first one was like a multiple choice 3 strikes game, and I turned it into Which Price is Right, like a Price is Right game, and it like killed. It was doing great, and it was making $25 a day. Just threw it out there. And again, these numbers are small, but you got to think $25 a day is $1,000 a month, or whatever it is, like $700 a month. So 750. I could do math. $750 a month. So, and then if you can sell it, that's $10,000 or more. So all these little things add up fast. And so guess what? I'm doing Which Price is Right? What's the celeb's salary? Like all these different riffs off of the same exact format and idea, just with much improved graphics, because my fiance is a graphic designer, so she can do all this stuff for like no expense. So I've kind of got the reskin model set up so much that I'm doing tons of them, and it doesn't even hit my radar, but I'm still doing them. It's just, yeah, it's just not super, like you said, it's not like a big app, or it's definitely not where I'm passionate. Although I think I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, making money is fun, right? Like not for just the sake of like, oh, I can buy a Mercedes, but because you feel like, oh, I figured something out. And maybe that's the American in me, where I have a good relationship with money, but yeah, it's cool to like be able to flip a $99 code and a $300 code and design investment into a $10,000 app sale. Absolutely, that's cool. But where I really get into like designing apps right now is the bigger stuff. But it took me a while to get here, right? Like, remember, I still have App Jetpack. We're doing the podcast. Like, I have a lot going on where my brain's pulled in a lot of different directions. So I feel like I've got the intellectual challenges happening with mobile, even if I weren't doing big apps, I guess. But I think I'm just ready for big apps. That's the truth. I think David is I think someone asked earlier, like, is David just a business dude or is he a developer? I mean, David is a developer, but he's also got some really good ways of looking at mobile. that align really well with what I want to do, and then we're both kind of nerds for economics. So it's like a perfect partner, and we talk every day or every one, for several hours a week. So it's a perfect partner to build a bigger app with without having to like try without having to like take a bigger risk with dropping 10,000 on a developer. I talk about Haim a lot, and he's a sponsor, but I've never built a really big app with him. So although I built Persona app with him, that's pretty big. So I guess that's a long way of saying, I'm still doing some reskins.
Okay,
Have you sold a lot of apps?
Last
so
question.
I just sold an app series for 55 grand, which was lower than I was expecting, but it was actually a really fair price because my memory of the revenue that it was generating was more historical than current and accurate. So it ended up being 14 and a half months, and I got to keep the code. So I could still pump out apps with the code. I just couldn't do those competing genres. But I mean, I hadn't thought much about it either. I had talked to Apptopia about a year ago saying, hey, I'd love to like build apps to sell. What type of apps are the hottest apps? Like, not hottest, but what are the characteristics? Just like if you were to say like to a real estate agent, what kind of houses? And they'd say, oh, well, everyone looks at the kitchen first. So if you're going to spend money, go onto the kitchen and then make sure the yard is nice or whatever the orders are. A bathroom on the master bedroom. Apptopia was kind of like, oh, just keep building apps. We don't want to talk about that. This isn't a place for like selling apps. Like, what? And now they're selling reskin code. It's like, guys, we were trying to partner with you. I had this story. Alan, David from the mastermind had this story. Like, come on, guys. So they're like struggling right now, but it's for a reason because look, we were trying to build apps exactly to the market that you're addressing, and you didn't want to answer us and work with us. And so, anyways, I sold. You know what I found is Flippa. Apptopia is okay, but it tends to be only known by mobile people. Flippa seems to be growing as not only just a place to buy website businesses, but a place to buy electronic businesses, or there's probably a better way to say that. But Flippa, I had by far the most traffic, by far. Apptopia, I would put a listing and pay $50 or whatever it is to like make it a little more well known, and I would get no emails, or I'd get an email saying like, hey, what does your app do? It's like, well, go download it. Like, why are you asking me that? Flippa is like serious guys who have you look at their histories and they've purchased like $450,000 worth of stuff. And the guy I was using, the guy who bought my series on Flippa for 55 grand, he had a history, like he had bought, it's better to, it's like a negotiation, but you want a smart partner on the other end. You don't have to be explaining basic stuff to them. And he got it. He understood my position, and he articulated his position. I say Flippa by far. Normal sales price. So I have gotten to the point where I listed at 20 months. Really, I think 24 months is the right number, 2 years. But if you just, at some point you kind of get over these apps, like especially if you have 100. You guys have been doing this for a year. I'd be curious how many apps you have, and I don't know if you guys are in Mobile 10X or if you're in the Facebook group, so we'll have to talk more about what your business is. But at some point you just get to the point where it's like, okay, enough. I don't want to deal with these apps anymore. So it becomes worth, if you'll give me the cash now and I don't have to deal with it, 20 months, deal. But I would say that you should hold out strong for 15 months. In fact, I listed an app that was making all in $400 a day. $400 a month. So it was just, is a $4,000, $5,000 a year app. There's 3 apps in the series, so it's not a series, but app group. And I was getting offers for like $2,300. So I just said, nah, forget that. I'm not going to accept it. And I got 4 offers, and they competed against each other up to like $2,600, and I just denied them all. And that was the app that I then did the update, and it started making a bunch of more money. So I would say if you're not getting what you want, just hold out. I mean, unless you have a super topical niche like SciRunner or Harlem Shake, those things sound so dated already, and that was only like 5 months ago. So unless you have something like that, I would just hold it and keep making the monthly revenues, and then when the market understands that it's worth more than 12 months, yeah, that's what I would say. What kind of criteria would you have for selling an app? Guys, this is before coffee too. I could do this all day. This is fun. What kind of criteria would you have for selling an app? Something like a mid-level app that you don't. No, I would say anything that's making more than a couple $100 a month and has a track record. If you're the buyer, you're probably saying, look, it needs to have 6 months track record, and it needs to be off its the first 30-day like peak, and then they'll do the math on the remaining. Because remember, they're valuing like, hey, at what month am I going to start making money from this thing? So it's like month 16 or month 13. So they want to have like pretty predictable revenue. But oh, there you go. Oh, 3 million downloads, guys. That's great. You guys that's better than I've got. I've got, I think, 2 million downloads. Yeah, no problem, Jordan. This is fun. So we're gonna turn the tables, and then I'll start picking your brain. Like, how did you get 3 million downloads on 15 apps? Yeah, I would say making $500 a month. I mean, remember I said if you do 15 months, then $400 a month ends up being $6,000, right? If the math's right. So, people are happy to buy things, buy apps for a lot less than that. Meaning a lot less than $6,000. So if you're making $200 a month, then that's $3,000, right? For 15 months. So I'm planning on posting anything making more than a couple $100 a month. Basically, is it worth at least double or triple what just buying the source code would be worth? Yeah, but again, at the same time, I also don't. Like I said earlier, if I'm making $5 a day from an app, then I can make 20. Like, I can figure that out, and I can figure out retention and monetization, all that stuff.
Right.
So there's never going to be a situation where I say, okay, this app is getting 100 downloads and I'm only making $5 a day. I'm going to figure out how to pump that up to 20% monetization rate, which is a very loose definition, but dollars over revenue daily. And yeah, I mean.
I think the main criteria is actually what you're trying to do. What is your strategic? Is this a strategic asset for you? If it isn't anymore, then maybe optimize it a little bit. But then you can sell anything.
Yeah, that's the key. If I've milked it for all it's worth, okay, Jordan, there we go. Now the truth's coming out. No, I'm just kidding. So we're about the same page, except it took me 100 apps to get that many downloads, and you've done it on 15. So that's really great. Yeah, I think that's the point, David, is like because these guys who are buying it aren't mobile app guys. They're buying revenue streams, and maybe they could market it to their website that they have or whatever. Maybe it's a strategic purchase for them, but they don't want to dig in and like do updates and all this stuff. They're buying code. They're buying like future revenue stream. So if you can optimize it, if you can max out like the optimization and the keywords and the retention mechanics and all that stuff, then I would say that's enough. Like my Face Compare app, it's ready to go. There's nothing else I can do to it. But guess what? This last round boosted the revenue by $9,000, or boosted the potential purchase price by $9,000 just by like getting it right. So yeah, that's how I look at it for my business. And I'm anxious, like right now I'm over these quizzes and I've been dealing with them for so long, and I'm just ready to get rid of them. And I'm just getting them all on Android now, and I'm getting paid versions. And I've got the 2 developers and a VA working on this stuff, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I don't want to sell them yet because I know I can milk out more revenue from them. And so as soon as I've got it proven that I can go, okay, these things are now making $300 a day instead of $120, then I'll flip them on Flippa. That's totally yeah.
Cool, dude. We've been talking for almost an hour on our live hangout. I think we got to wrap it up.
Okay.
But this was great fun.
We have something coming up June 5th with Steve P. Young. He's going to host a webinar, and we're just going to sit there and answer questions. And so if you guys want to join that, I'll send you guys a link to that. I don't really know what it's going to be. I haven't done it yet. Steve's kind of in charge. But I mean, imagine if there were 20 people here, 30 people here that were all in the forum asking questions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It'd be dope to, I mean, it's interesting for me to think through this stuff, like I don't have these conversations all the time. So,
No, this was great. Thanks, Jordan
Yeah.
and Mark, for
We got to do
joining.
another one, just like a Q&A session, because it's really helpful to me too.
Yeah, I think that's what I expected from these hangouts. That's where I wanted to go. It's just really live interaction with the listeners. It's awesome. Thanks, guys. Join next week, please, and bring some friends and beer or whatever. And
All right,
that was awesome.
all right, Jordan, I'm checking out your apps. So hopefully I'll find you on one of the forums.
Yeah, let's keep talking in the Facebook group or comments or whatever it is. Write us an email if you have a specific question, David at businesspodcast.com, Chris is at businesspodcast.com. And talk to you guys soon. And yeah, no later than the next week, I guess.
Yeah, David, thanks for carrying this, man. Thanks for getting it on time.
No problem. Talk to you soon, Chris.
All right, guys, later. See you, David.